My mother tapped her wineglass with a fork before the turkey was even fully cut, and I knew from the shine in her eyes that she had been waiting all day to say whatever came next. "We sold the diner," she said. "Finally. Highline Diners bought it this morning." My brother Dennis grinned around a mouthful of stuffing. "Guess all those nights you spent scrubbing Nana's grill were for nothing, Mara. Should have spent them at happy hour like a normal person." I put my fork down slowly. My name is Mara Ellison, and for 6 years, 3 or 4 nights a week, I had driven across town after my day job to help my grandmother run Rosie's Kitchen, the diner she built from a single counter and 4 stools back in 1987. I learned her chili recipe standing at her side on slow Sunday afternoons. I learned how to close out the register at midnight when her hands started shaking too much to count the money herself, and I never once, in 6 years, told anyone in my family how many of those nights I had spent sitting alone with her in that empty diner, listening to stories about a husband who died before I was born and a business she built out of nothing but hard work and stubbornness. "You did not think to call me before signing anything," I said. "There was nothing to call you about," my mother said, wiping her mouth with a napkin like the whole thing bored her. "It was Nana's estate. Dennis and I are the ones in charge of it." "You knew that." "I knew that," I said. "I also knew you two barely visited her the last 2 years, so forgive me for being surprised you moved this fast without a single conversation." My mother's fork clicked against her plate a little harder than it needed to. "We do not owe you a play-by-play of estate business, Mara. I did not answer him right away, because what he did not know, what neither of them knew, was that 2 years before my grandmother died, on a slow Tuesday afternoon with the diner empty and rain coming down outside the window seat we always called hers, she had sat across from me with a plain folder and a look on her face I had never seen before. She had waited until the last customer left and Walt had gone home early, until it was just the two of us and the sound of rain on the front window, before she reached under the counter and set the folder down between our 2 coffee cups. "I am not doing this because you are my favorite," she had said, sliding the folder across the table. "I am doing this because you are the only one who ever actually stayed." Stayed for what? I had asked her, only half joking. "The chili?" She had not laughed. "For all of it. The slow nights. The nights I could not remember if I had already told you a story. The nights you drove 40 minutes after your own job just to help me lock up 4 stools and a grill." She had tapped the folder once, like she was sealing something. "Your mother loves this place the way you love a photograph of somewhere you used to live. Dennis has never once asked me how it is doing. You are the only one who ever asked if I needed help before I had to ask you first." Inside that folder were legal papers, dense with language I only half understood at the time, moving something about the diner's name and its recipe into a small company that existed under my name alone. She had never told my mother. She had never told Dennis. "Do not go looking for a reason to use this," she said. "Just do not let anyone talk you out of it if it ever comes to that." I folded the papers back into the envelope and did not look at them again for 2 years, never entirely sure, if a real fight ever came, whether a folder signed. "Congratulations," I said instead, keeping my voice steady. "I hope the buyer knows what they are getting." 3 days later, on a gray Tuesday morning, my phone rang from a number I did not know. "Ms. Ellison? This is Curtis Whitfield with Highline Diners. I am calling about the paperwork for the Rosie's Kitchen name and the recipe that goes with it. Our legal team found a problem. The name and recipe are owned by a different company than the one that signed the sale papers. What he sent over that same afternoon confirmed something had been filed under my name years before, exactly as Nana said it would be. Highline had bought a building, a lease, and a set of kitchen equipment. Whether that old folder actually gave me the right to keep the name attached to any of it, under real legal pressure, was a different question entirely, and sitting there with his email open on my screen, I realized I was not fully sure of the answer myself. "I will be honest with you," Whitfield said, his voice tighter than it had been a minute earlier. "My board already voted this morning. If this is not settled within 30 days, we are not just walking away from the sale. We are pulling the Rosie's Kitchen name and the recipe off the menu permanently and rebranding that location under something we already own outright. Whatever your grandmother built stops existing in that building for good. I would rather that did not happen. but I need you to understand exactly what is actually at stake here. My mother called that evening. Highline says there is a problem with the name, she said. Something about a company neither Dennis nor I have ever heard of. It is my company, I said. Nana set it up 2 years ago. The name and the recipe were never part of the estate you signed away. That is not possible, she said finally. Your grandmother was not well enough near the end to be signing anything on her own. Dennis called an hour later, his voice sharp and fast, like he had been rehearsing it. If you had Nana sign something while she was already getting sick, that is not going to hold up. I am already talking to a lawyer, Mara. If you think you are just going to walk off with something that was supposed to belong to all 3 of us, you are wrong. I will fight this in front of a judge if I have to. I never asked her for anything, I said. She asked me. Sure she did, he said, and hung up before I could answer. I sat at my kitchen table that night with the same folder pulled out of the drawer where it had sat untouched for 2 years, reading through pages I barely remembered signing, trying to convince myself the language inside actually meant what I hoped it meant. Somewhere around midnight, I found the line assigning the trademark and the recipe copyright to the holding company, my name typed clearly beneath a signature block that was unmistakably my grandmother's, dated well over a year before Dennis had ever mentioned anything about her health. I had no idea yet whether that timing would actually matter to a judge or to anyone else in my family. I only knew, sitting there with cold coffee and a folder full of legal language, that I was not going to find out by staying quiet and hoping it worked out. I called my grandmother's old lawyer the next morning, a family lawyer named Adiz Okafor who had drawn up the diner's first lease decades earlier. She listened to the whole story, then told me exactly what I needed to hear. If Dennis is already talking about a judge, we are not going to solve this over the phone, she said. I am going to ask Highline to host no more one-sided calls where everyone gets to say whatever they want without proof in front of them. We bring the medical records, we bring the transfer date, and we end this in one sitting instead of dragging it out for weeks. What do you need from me before then? I asked her. Anyone who can speak to your grandmother's state of mind around the time she signed this, Adiz said. A doctor is good. Someone who saw her every single day is often better. I called Walt that same afternoon, and he did not hesitate for even a second. Tell me where to sign, he said. I watched that woman run circles around suppliers half her age the same month you are talking about. I will say that in front of anyone who wants to hear it. It took 8 days to get the clinic records, schedule the meeting, and get Walt's statement typed up and notarized. 8 days I spent mostly bracing myself instead of doubting myself. Because Adiz had already told me plainly what the timeline would show once we had it in hand. Even so, there were nights during that week when I lay awake running through every version of how the meeting could go wrong. What if the clinic was slow and the records did not arrive in time? What if Dennis's lawyer found some other angle neither Adiz nor I had thought to prepare for? What if, after everything, a judge somewhere down the line decided 2 years of unpaid nights did not count for as much as a shared last name did? I did not have answers to any of it. I only had a folder, a notarized statement from a man who had never once flattered anyone in his life, and a date on a page that I was choosing to trust would matter more than my family's certainty that it would not. The meeting happened in a small conference room at Whitfield's regional office, the kind of room with a long table and bad coffee, and by the time I sat down across from my mother and Dennis, I understood this was the only conversation. Dennis went first, his lawyer sliding a folder across the table toward Whitfield. Our position is simple. Our grandmother was not competent to sign away rights to a business her entire family had a stake in. Any transfer made during a period of declining mental health should be voided. Do you have documentation of when that decline began? Adiz asked, calm and unhurried. Dennis's lawyer hesitated. We have a billing record referencing a diagnosis. Dated when? Adiz asked. He read the date off the paper in front of him. Adiz did not even open her folder yet. She simply said, that diagnosis is dated 11 months after the transfer you are trying to void. The room went quiet in a way I had not expected, the kind of quiet where you can hear the air conditioning. The company transfer happened first, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The diagnosis happened 11 months later. There was never a version of this where she was incompetent when she signed it. She was the sharpest person in this family right up until the day she got sick, and she made sure, on her own, 2 years before any of us knew she was dying, that the name over that door would never end up with someone who only remembered it after it was profitable again. I looked at Dennis when I said the last part. You did not lose this diner today. You lost it the moment you stopped showing up for it. Adiz finally opened her folder and slid the clinic records across the table, both doctors' signatures visible, the dates lined up next to each other, where no one in the room could argue with them. Dennis was not ready to fold yet. A billing date does not prove she was sharp for the 2 years before it, he said, cutting past his own lawyer. People decline slowly. Everyone knows that. Adiz did not flinch. Which is why I also asked Walt, who worked beside your grandmother 6 days a week for 26 years, to put his own statement in writing about her state of mind the week this was signed. She slid one more page across the table, dated and signed. He describes her running the register herself, correcting his measurements on a fresh batch of chili, and firing a supplier over the phone for a late delivery, the same week this transfer was filed. That is not the statement of a man on anyone's payroll to lie for her. That is Walt, who has never once in 26 years said a kind word about a single person he did not mean it about. Dennis's lawyer looked at the papers for a long moment, then quietly told Dennis they needed to speak outside. Whitfield checked his watch while they stepped out, not unkindly. For what it is worth, if this meeting ends without an agreement, the board's vote from this morning stands starting Monday. I would rather it not come to that, but I need everyone still in this room to understand that clock did not stop just because we are all sitting down together. My mother did not look at the papers at all. She looked at me. You knew this whole time, she said. 2 years. You let us plan a sale on a building we did not actually control the name of, and you said nothing. I said nothing because Nana asked me to, I said. And because every time I imagined telling you, I imagined exactly this room. You could have saved all of US months of this, she said, her voice cracking slightly in a way I had never once heard from her in my whole life. Months of lawyers, months of Dennis panicking, months of me lying awake wondering if I had somehow let your grandmother get taken advantage of at the end without realizing it. I was protecting the one thing she asked me to protect, I said. I am sorry it cost you sleep. I am not sorry I did it. Whitfield cleared his throat. I would like to solve this today if everyone is willing. Dennis came back in first, his face pale, his lawyer standing slightly behind him instead of beside him now. I am withdrawing the claim, he said, not looking at me. Then, quieter, almost too quiet for the room to catch, I took a loan against my share 3 months ago. If this deal falls apart, I lose my house. That is the real reason I fought this so hard. Not Nana. Me. Nobody in the room said anything for a moment. My mother's face changed in a way I had never seen it change before, somewhere between anger and shame. Even Whitfield, who had spent the whole meeting looking mostly at his watch, glanced up at Dennis like he was seeing an actual person for the first time instead of the other side of a dispute. You gambled the estate before it was even settled, she said to him, and for the first time that whole day, her anger was not pointed at me. I looked at Whitfield. I want to make an offer, on the record, in this room. Highline could keep the name Rosie's Kitchen and the chili recipe under a formal license, paying an ongoing fee into a trust one would fully control, with no other family member holding any authority over it. A fair share of that fee would go toward the estate every few months, enough overtime to help Dennis cover what he owed the bank. But I set one condition out loud, in front of everyone. Dennis works unpaid weekend shifts at the diner for the next 6 months. Not for the money. My mother spoke next, her voice smaller than I had heard it in years. I should have called you before any of this. I told myself it was easier not to. It was not easier. It was just easier for me. Then, in front of everyone, she said the part one had been waiting 2 years to hear. You were the one who actually stayed. I am sorry it took a room full of lawyers for me to say that out loud. She did not resign as co-executor that day, in front of everyone, the way the moment probably deserved. She sat with it instead, quietly, for almost 3 weeks, until one Tuesday morning she walked into Adie's office on her own, without me there and without an audience this time, and signed the paperwork herself. I do not expect you to trust me yet, he said. I just wanted you to know I am not doing the shifts because the agreement says I have to anymore. I already paid off the bank last month. Then why are you still here? I asked him. He shrugged, looking younger than he had in years. Because Walt still yells at me when I underseason the chili, and somehow that feels like the first honest thing anyone in this family has said to me in a long time. I did not tell him that was the closest thing to Nana's own voice I had heard out of him yet. Some things are better left for him to notice on his own, in his own time, the same slow way I once learned to run that register at midnight without anyone standing over my shoulder. If someone has ever tried to act like something you built belonged to them the whole time, I would like to know what finally made them stop. Tell me whenever you are ready.